Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Fintech Asia Edge podcast. We're delighted to have you back in conversations looking at fintech, digital assets, and Web3 across Asia. With me today is Lareina Wang, who is the Executive Director and Head of Innovation and Digital at DBS Hong Kong. She has had a stellar career looking at digital in banking as well as innovation. And she is also the recently elected chairperson of the Fintech Association of Hong Kong, our first lady chairperson, but also somebody who's well deserving of the recognition. I'm looking forward to how that goes. So, welcome to the Fintech Asia Edge podcast, Lareina. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thanks for having me, Musheer.
We are at the center, which is one of the tallest buildings in Hong Kong and nicely, very differently shaped buildings. And we have all the trophies that DBS has collected over time. Lareina, your career in finance has been a lot about the growth you've seen through in banking largely, right? So it would be great to understand that journey you've had, what attracted you into kind of finance, and then that journey transforming from what I would say traditional banking into the digital world and then innovation across, right? So how's that journey been for you?
Sure. I don't think I chose finance or banking. It's more like I stumbled into it.
Sure.
I really started as a digital marketeer back in London in the 2000s.
Sure.
When digital media was still new. Digital marketing was almost an unheard of idea. And working for an agency serving clients that are not in financial services.
Okay.
And later, there is an opportunity to get into one of the leading banks in the UK, Barclays Bank, in their digital marketing team. So there's a continuation of digital marketing theme.
Yeah.
And then soon after, I joined HSBC in London, continuing with my digital career, but this time in digital banking, looking at the website management,
Sure.
And further deepen into the secured internet banking management, and launched one of the first mobile banking apps over there.
Nice.
And then about innovation, that's I think even more coincidental. It wasn't I sought out for it. I was on my second maternity leave, and when I came back, I got summoned by the head of digital. Here's a secret squirrel project.
Okay.
Like, huh? Okay. And he said, go research PSD2. That was 2016. And I went Googling, as that's your first port of call. And most of the stuff I can find about PSD2 has something to do with Sony, which is the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
Until I realized he's talking about Payment Service Directive 2. And that opened the whole open banking chapter for me, which was hugely fascinating.
Yeah.
And so from then, we started HSBC's global first fintech partnership, as well as launched the UK's first open banking proposition that's by a high street bank. So that's my entry into innovation. Yeah. I moved to Hong Kong 6 years ago to do something quite different, which was focusing on customer proposition and strategy.
Yeah.
And I love digital so much that I had to go back.
The was too strong here.
Yeah. HKMA had this initiative. This was 2017-18-ish, called Smart Banking.
Smart Banking, yeah.
And then adequately, I became head of Smart Banking for HSBC, leading the primarily open API, and had the honor to be the chairperson for HCAP, leading the industry in setting up the common standards across the 4 phases of Open API. And then I came to DBS, first time in corporate banking, and found it challenging and fascinating in the digital world. So now I run DBS Hong Kong's Institutional Banking Group's digital portfolio.
Very nice transition. It's something that I've seen happen in the recent past is a lot of times people, when they think about marketing, it's almost like, oh, it's a product that's just designing, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, the experience that I've had dealing with very accomplished marketing professionals who have either moved on to other things or as you have journeyed into finance, is they have a acute sense on 2 very important things. One being they are good at selling, right? So they understand the value proposition of the institution, which frankly, many don't, even if they're in senior positions and leading things. And the second element is they understand potentially a lot more about the consumer or the end user, let me use that term, what they're looking for, right? So
Yeah.
trying to marry the two is all about marketing, and you've kind of channeled that, and it's something I think it needs to be highlighted, that transitioning into finance is not as challenging as people think. I'm an engineer, right? I dive straight out of engineering into trading and capital markets, right? So it took me 6 months to explain to somebody in a decent layman language, I won't say even layman language, to kind of tell what I did. I was trading futures. So I would be like, well, house, we're selling a house in 6 months' time. That's what it is, right? And we're deciding the price now. Didn't even get into the complexities of interest rate futures and bond futures, etc. But I feel you can learn finance a lot easier in some senses, because you deal with it on a day-to-day basis, and then as it gets technical, that's a different conversation.
Yes.
But
go on. No, I think thank you for the acknowledgement of marketeers, because I think marketeers could be quite misunderstood. Like, you are just end of the line. Once the product is developed, go promote it. But I think, like you said, a true marketeer should be able to shape the proposition depending on the voice of customers, to designing the product, ensuring the customer journey is actually really solving the customer pain points and problem. And then the go-to market is embedded in the design of the product. So and I still identify more as a marketeer than as a banker.
All right. Now you've now had a transition from UK. The FCA was probably the leader when it came to a lot of fintech initiatives globally. MAS picked up the cudgel, as did HKMA in terms of the next two. Probably Australia, but largely these four would be the ones who really push through with innovation. But how was that transition coming from a work career which was in the UK to Asia, albeit with the same bag, but it was a different role? How did you find that career transition? But also, how did you find the difference in consumers, as well as the whole value proposition?
A very interesting question. I'm actually from Shanghai, not too far from where we're sitting right here, way further from London. But actually, professionally, I would say I grew up in London. So the culture I was exposed to, the working culture, and what shaped me, I would say, is pretty much the London Western working culture, where there's a lot more independency, as well as everyone feel, regardless of the junior and seniority, you can have a voice. Here, I'm not saying people can't have a voice, but the way we are brought up, by and large, the Chinese education, Confucianism, you're there to listen to the experts to tell you what is supposed to be. So you will find in the meeting room, that's the biggest shock coming from London into Hong Kong, is people don't talk. They're waiting for the most senior person to speak, and then they start from there. That I think is one of the biggest culture shock, although in a way I'm coming back to my own culture. And what shocked me the most from as I came back, my first role was the regional head of customer strategy and propositions, was the lack of digital in Hong Kong. 2018 at the time. So my life back then in the UK was already very surrounded around digital. And I was doing my weekly grocery shopping, with my apps, etc. Coming here, I realized, wow, so much cash. There's no tap and pay. And Hong Kong taxi, they hate you.
Still do.
To start off with, they hate you. But then also, if you don't have cash, or you have dare I say, $500, that's really bad. And there was no grocery delivery at the time. There was one brief existence of a company, I think, called Busy Bee. Was it Happy Bee? Busy Bee.
Busy Bee,
very nice delivery. I found that, they finally found someone. They went out of business quite quickly, right? And then, but kudos, I think, to Hong Kong, there's a collection of collective effort. It's in the past 60 years, we both live here, we know how much we've advanced, right? Although still a bit contentious whether you can call Uber legally or not, but we're I think getting
there. Yeah, and it's an interesting conversation around cultures and other elements, right? In some senses, I had that similar experience. I came to Hong Kong 10 years ago. I came from India where I had internet banking, a pretty good, solid internet banking with a portfolio feature from 2010 or 29 in 2009. I don't even remember, with ICICI Bank. And I came in, and it was HSBC, and I looked at the website and I was like, there's so many points and all of it is lost. And I was like, I was like, this is not really great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I'm sure HSBC India was very much there when it came to what the competitive.
I think it was standard internet banking across all, but that revamp should have happened around 2016, 2017 time.
But I was also then told by a fellow fintech aficionado who was at HSBC at the time, had just left, which is bringing to mind in terms of the median age of Hong Kong, right? Which is 45, 46, something like that, depending on some metrics, but thereabouts, mid-40s, right?
Yes.
And so they were like, imagine 50% of the population, and this is 10 years ago, so a lot more is moved upwards there, but a lot of the population aren't really tech savvy. We have 2.2 penetration of mobile phones, so 20%, so every person has two. The taxi drivers have 10, which is a whole different conversation. But the piece he was trying to portray was why it was so busy and a lot of information was because the senior members of that 45 plus were not accustomed to online, and they need a lot more information, they need a lot more help, right? Plus then the transition of iCash, etc. And I felt it wasn't necessarily an age or even an income level conversation of why you don't use digital. I had friends, my now wife, who's also Hong Kong Chinese, who weren't very comfortable using online finance. I wouldn't even say like, it was like, PayMe only picked up, in my view, beyond, and I'm speaking to Brad very soon, it's like, one of the main reasons was it was by HSBC. So there was that inherent trust why people started using it versus anything else which wasn't being picked up much because we don't know who you are, we don't trust you, and credit cards are so prevalent, right? So did you feel that where one of the primary reasons is just security, the sense of security people got with brand names, and they weren't using digital because they felt it wasn't secure despite being a mature market, right?
Definitely. I think the level of comfort, this I saw in the UK as well. When mobile banking was first launched, people were like, oh, I don't feel safe moving certain amount of money. But that, I think, that phase goes by quite quickly because people, our psychologists trained in this way. You get bolder once you feel, oh, that's okay, $100 is okay. Then next time I'm more comfortable with $500, and then it becomes a norm. And I've definitely seen that trend looking at the different stats I see. And I think and it's natural going from individuals always go first, and then gradually will be SMEs and large corporates. And definitely being the head of digital for the institutional banking group here, our digital transaction volume growth is double digits year on year for several years in a row. And we're seeing the drop of the very beloved, mysterious thing to me called check. Because in Shanghai, I didn't grow up with check. We leapfrogged that part. But check is very prevalent in Hong Kong. And so apart from this die hard check that cannot be migrated, slowly, gradually reducing, the digital transaction is really becoming the mainstream.
So I want to talk about two things, and I'm taking a deep dive, and you don't have to represent HSBC, but your thoughts on this. One is checks, right? And I feel when I was running the association's general manager, a lot of our fintechs were also sending us checks, right? And I was like, you're a fintech, please transfer online. They're like, no, our accounting team does checks because if we do a digital transaction, it's $50 or $100 per transaction. If you add it up, it's small, but it's still, we want to save everything. And hence we're sending you the check, right? And I think now after the smart banking initiatives, you've seen that change. Plus and as an extension of this point, which is my second point, and this is not being critical of the Hong Kong HSBC's marketing team, I felt quite often in Hong Kong until very recently, maybe through COVID and after, your digital innovation products were not really highlighted and were not drivers for customer acquisition or anything else, right? And I'll give three examples. The first one is like WeChat, HSBC launched digital Hongbao, right? The red packets, 2017, 2018, right? And no marketing. There was an article in SCMP the day before Chinese New Year, 2-3 days before. And the way we figured it out was I used to look at that time, I was very curiously, would look at updates on the app store, right? So when you're doing the update, there's a list of what's going
very
on.
Very geeky thing to do. Okay.
The engineer in me kicks in. But I was like, why was this not being shown across, pushed? Because, and there was, of course, in the tram station in front of HSBC Central was only place where there was some marketing around it, right? So that's one example. The second example is the checks piece. HSBC business banking, at least, and I think also the retail banking. You can now upload your check, scan your check, and so you don't need to really go physical. And it's beautiful, right? It saves a lot on both sides. And thirdly is just generally a lot of the internet banking features which are very useful, like remittance or all the others, are not really coming to the fore. And this is not just HSBC. This is an experience with a lot of the banks here. They're doing it. They're building it. There is an offering, but not being showcased so much. Why do you think was the case a few years back, and do you think that's changed?
Well,
or do you think
I can't comment on behalf of HSBC, given
of course,
that they're my past employers. But interesting on the Hongbao example, I don't think it's actually 17, 18. It's probably more like 2021, because I remember being involved in that conversation, and there are multiple reasons. And eventually, I think there was a quite good offering on PayMe. But interestingly, because I'm a heavy user of WeChat, all my family is in China, there were a few years, I can't remember exactly which years, the Hongbao thing was like crazy during Chinese New Year.
16, that's when initial years they launched.
And the past, this year, almost nobody sent a Hongbao on WeChat. Last year was already almost dead. I don't know whether it's because no one has any more money or what, or that phase has died down. But that kind of feature. But to your point on the most frequent used or the useful features to you, why is it not in the front? I think the trend would be, even in SME banking and the corporate banking, digital banking world, we're seeing is your favorite is not my favorite.
Sure.
I might be a trading company and I use these functionalities a lot. You are an e-commerce company, you use these functionalities a lot. So instead of deciding what should be on the homepage, we let you tailor-make your dashboard. Then that makes it look like, this is mine. All my most frequently used things are there. So
so customization at an individual level versus a broad.
Exactly.
Because they're different.
Exactly.
Okay, fair,
yes.
The
tools are there. Just help yourself.
And I'm also, slightly, I'm not exposed to, say, the Cantonese marketing, so I won't have that perspective of this being pushed. At least in English, that was what I felt. The second piece I want to talk about, based on what you're doing now in particular, which is dealing with institutions, businesses, corporates, right? I feel more than the retail market in Hong Kong and quite a few established economies, funnily enough, including the US, including Germany, which I think is a very good parallel to Hong Kong and also possibly Israel. Institutions aren't really very digital. It's like, they're not much digital at all, right? Do you see that having changed significantly because of COVID, or was it more of a natural transition where now you have seen a change in management, that handover from one generation to more of the older millennials, as it were, who are more digitally savvy, and hence that's percolating down? What would be the reasons you see if you are seeing it, right? That's number one, right? Because you mentioned about the double-digit growth that DBS has been seeing, so which means there is that transition happening. So
So one, I think, regardless of companies, etc., behind it, the operators, decision makers are still individuals.
Sure. Yeah.
Just like what we said before, this becomes cliche. What you're used to Amazon, Taobao, you will expect on your banking. What you expect on your personal banking you expect on your operation for your business, whether it's your own SME business or the company you work for, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one that I think people's behavior definitely is a big driver for that. Two, I do think as the first phase of digital transformation was more focused on retail, individual banking, and then wealth management. Now it's already gone. We have or are putting more investment on corporate banking and institutional banking this side. So with more investment, that means your experience is better. The functionalities are richer. The more then you can do. And then customers can see the benefit. If you do that via paper or go to a branch or call your RM, it might take 5 days. Whereas if you do this yourself, yes, it seems that it's not as easy as, hey, I want to do this to your RM. But by doing this yourself, spending 2 minutes, there's straight through processing. Your request is handled straight away. So the benefits then is there.
So it's habit forming essentially.
Yeah, habit forming. And then there's this value proposition, which is faster. And then to your point earlier, if you do remittance, then every time hefty fee, then why would I do that? I send a check. Check is also expensive. The cost is borne by the bank, right? And now sometimes passed down to the customer. But now as the FPS is very widely adopted in Hong Kong, that domestic payment perspective is free or very, very low cost.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's easy to switch as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring in, we've seen this evolution, and one of the reasons I feel there's been very strong growth in Hong Kong is the regulator realized, acknowledged, and acted upon it. And I'm giving kudos to HKMA a lot early enough, and have sustained with it and continued with it and keep going on. It's almost second nature for them now, right? But the other element is the ecosystem, and you've been part of HCAB, as you said. You chaired the committee which is looking at open banking. You're now the chair of the association, but you have been involved with the association in various capacities as co-chair, then board member, and coming up to the chair. So in your view, and having contributed, and I'll break it down in two parts, and because I think it'll be helpful for certain members of the audience. Part one being how important are ecosystem bodies and why, right? From being on the institutional side. Now, persons like me who are more consultants, advisors, startups, we get it and we will promote it. But from a institutional side, which is where you come from, what was that importance and is number one. Number two is on a personal level. You engaged, you gave obviously your personal time, given your work hours would very extensive work hours that you would have. This is taking your personal time to contribute, and you were actively doing it. So what was the motivation, and what have you gotten out of it largely, right? So part one, and then we'll touch on part two and move towards the associations.
Okay, so part one is the importance of ecosystem.
Yes, and from
I think ecosystem. Hong Kong has a very attractive thing that one above everything else, Hong Kong people. I'm not talking about ethnically Hong Kong people. People in Hong Kong over the time, all have a very practical, can-do attitude. We want to do things. No one is here to waste time, right? We don't really enjoy empty talks. So from that perspective, when you are in a networking group, then not networking group. When you are in a network, the conversation goes towards very practical thing very quickly. And in this, the other thing great about Hong Kong is it's big enough but small enough for you to find the relevant, important people for your particular matter relatively easily. So for me, as the 6 years I'm in Hong Kong, I work for a bank, and then my involvement with the Fintech Association. The public sector side will be the government bodies, the HKMAs, the Invest Hong Kong, the Cyberport, STP, etc. They're all very accessible, and then you can bring them to the table. For Fintech Association, we put forward our contribution towards the consultation paper, SFC, HKMA, etc., have put out to put in our members' opinion. And that's being listened to and being acted upon. So you feel there's a good partnership going on with the public side. And then let's talk about the institutions, financial institutions, the banks, big insurance companies. In the network, it's actually quite fluid, right?
Yeah.
Today, you wear red color. Well, in my case, tomorrow I also wear red color. Okay. But in some cases, you change colors, sure, but your network is there. And then we have the tech companies. Then we have the professional service providers, sure, like EY, Deloitte, KPMG, etc. Then also you have those tax firms, lawyers, and then I'm leaving to me, most important, given the Fintech Association, to the last, which is sure, the Fintechs. I think Hong Kong MA is being supportive and is very vocal about a number of very important key themes, like Gen AI very recently, green tech very recently, right? And all the CBDCs and the tokenized deposits and the digital assets, all these very trendy things. We have got fairly clear regulatory certainty, I think, around these areas, which helps fintechs operating in these areas to know what's the direction I'm heading. So it's a long-winded way to answer, maybe not even answer the question that ecosystem, despite being a not geographically vast market, we actually have a very vibrant ecosystem here that are all interconnected. And now I need to plug in my GBA spiel because I truly believe it. It's right across the
Shenzhen River,
either a bridge or a river or a tunnel or a high-speed rail or a taxi, right?
Correct.
I think there's even more opportunities for either for the Hong Kong fintechs to expand over there or for the GBA or even broader China fintechs to go via GBA to come over here. So big, vibrant ecosystem.
We will come back to the GBA. You've been leading a lot of GBA initiatives, both at HSBC and with DBS. And congratulations on the signing with the Shenzhen Association.
That you might need to strike because we're announcing at FinTech Week.
Okay. Also, a meeting with the Shenzhen.
We've just met with them.
The meeting rather, right?
Signing will be later.
Some signing and stuff later. But I want to touch on your involvement. What drove you, as in, professionally, individually, personally, to want to be part of these ecosystems? And I can understand HCAB role probably may also have been semi-professional.
Appointed.
Versus the association was more at a personal level, I would imagine.
Two things. One is quite personal. When I first arrived here, 2018. Because I had quite extensive network in London. And first coming to here, I just felt quite, I don't know anyone and nobody knows me. And then Anthony Morris, who was, now he retired from the association board, but he was a board member, had been active for a long time. He brought me into one of the events association has put together. I remember it was talking about the launch or the upcoming launch of Mox Bank. And I think it was Capgemini who was presenting, and it was I think in the Verse or could be right in one of those. And I just remember remember the feeling being. It's very bubbly and energizing, and people are positive and welcoming. So I immediately felt very drawn to the association, and I started to become more involved as co-chair, etc. later. So that's why the Fintech Association. Number two is I actually really enjoy building communities. Back in university, I took over a association. Funny enough, the name is quite close. It's called FCA. It's called FIA. Sorry, not FCA. FCA is the UK regulator. FIA, so Future Industrialist Association. Someone with very bad English came up with it. Basically, it means Future Entrepreneur Association. And but the time I took over, they were almost going, well, they have gone bankrupt with huge trust issues, as in the previous management took all the membership money and then ran away.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
bad reputation.
Bad, yeah.
So brought it back to life, and I built great friendship out of that as well. Friends that we're still great friends today.
Yeah.
So community building is something that I enjoy, and also I think I'm good at. I'm in the capacity as chair for the Fintech Association. I really want to make sure that we have a very good representation of all voices in the ecosystem that we just highlighted, not just a few strong voices.
Correct. Yeah.
Because I cannot hand on heart say this represents the Hong Kong fintech industry. We have a very good and respected name, right? So for me, it will be to make the presence, increase the presence, and increase the impact, and then so we're true to our name. Well, you were one of those first who started it. Is that the vision that is aligned?
I was just going to say that, right? When we did it, it was the same like camaraderie we had when we were building it, sitting in CBA with Micah's, setting it up 7:30 a.m. every week, right? Till we launched it, and then it was fortnightly till I became general manager, and then it was monthly. Like, but there's a lot of commitment of people who are very senior and giving a lot of their time because. And there's also a few people like, hey, we don't even need to be in the limelight. We don't even need any publicity. And they were like, once it was set up, like, okay, we are done. We're going back to focus on our work. But because they wanted to build a community because they saw the value in it. And community building, I feel, is most effective when you're part of the community and you are doing it for the broader good. Once there is some sense of, you may have some other, I wouldn't say agendas, but other objectives that you may have when you're building it. But unless you have the community at heart, it's going to fade away very quickly because then people can see through and you're not as effective. Right?
Yes,
so
agreed.
It's great to see that that's the same ethos that you're coming from and building on and quite evident in what you've done so far.
I would say all the board is the same. Like,
correct.
Just like you said, everyone is very selflessly putting time in, and it's really a lot of time. Personal time.
And that is one thing I definitely think is stands out in Hong Kong and some of the bigger places where people are willing to contribute because they see this not as an individual game, but realize if the community grows, the ecosystem grows, the value grows collectively. And we'll talk about that piece, right? What are your thoughts on the next phase? So obviously the HKMA has you had the smart banking initiatives, now we have the 5 Fintech, which is
every bank goes Fintech.
Every bank goes Fintech, which is expiring. I mean, ending soon, and then you'll have the next phase in terms of the next steps, right? There'll be a newer theme, but from a fintech association, let's even forget the association. Just as an ecosystem, where do you see, say top 3-4 areas which will grow or become stronger in, say, the next 3 to 5 years timeline? I don't want to go like 10, 15, but like 3 to 5 years more practical growth that you can see.
Actually, the association will be hosting a very interesting panel on the FinTech Week. And the topic is basically Hong Kong FinTech 2030.
Oh,
and
I didn't know about this.
We didn't want any cliche, i.e., what I might be obliged to say. We have Ben Quinlan, who is also our ex-chair and also happens to be a comedian, to be the game master of this. And we want to make it very interactive. And we want people to give genuine, even wild guesses of looking into a crystal ball. So if you're interested, look up for this event.
I will be there. Just to get a laugh out of it as well.
And maybe you can be on stage. We're looking for best speakers who are free to speak their minds.
Happy to. We can do that.
So for as of me, I'm a very boring and practical person in a way. So I will say from bank's perspective, the trend to digital is irreversible. When I was just reading some fintech news of the UK a couple of days ago, there is a startup bank called Monzo. I think in our industry, everyone looks up to Monzo and Starling, right? When they first started, I was there, 2017, I think is when they launched. And I'm not saying HSBC was arrogant about it. There was arrogant attitude in the banking circle. But we always took this kind of, because the UI and UX was so good, right? But still, everyone's still in the mindset of, oh, virtual banks or digital-only banks are not going to make a lot of money or attract any serious audience. Now they are just behind HSBC as a market number 5 in terms of number of retail customers. It's over 10 million.
Wow.
And that's what 7 years worth. So I think, but it's not to say only virtual banks or digital-only banks can do that, but it gives me a very positive belief that my thinking of everything will be digital will one day become true.
Sure.
Okay, so that's one. And I think so in the biggest difference designing digital banking experience for retail versus corporate customers is in retail, it's quite single-minded. You want to remove as much friction as possible from their journeys. Risk and security not compromised, that's granted. But in the even SME world, because the operator and the decision maker, the controller might be multiple different people. Some of the frictions might be deliberately introduced. So to the designer of a digital experience, it's quite, you're being pulled in all directions. Who do you actually design for? But I think this will still, because the trend, number one, the trend is irreversible. We will find solutions, and then I think there will be a lot more fully digitally operated journeys and capabilities that we can offer as banks, not just one bank, as banks. To the corporate customers. And then can't talk about banking and the future without talking about the power of Gen AI. So we all know there's tons of repetitive work, which is painful but needed. So I do think, with some small caveats, because I think there's also a danger of Gen AI being overheated and too much expectation on it and being abused in terms of usage, as well as all the usual risks associated with it. But I do think it could free up a lot of capacity that will allow maybe more fundamental operating model change in banking. And then you won't let me off until I talk about fintechs overall in Hong Kong, right? So because we have very supportive regulators who are open-minded, and not only they're looking internally, they're also looking at what their counterparts are doing across the globe, right? I'm pretty positive that we will continue to shape and lead in these important areas that we talked about earlier. And with industry associations like ourselves, the Fintech Association, the voices of various different players in the ecosystem, large or small, can be heard. That, I hope, will pave the way for an even more vibrant fintech ecosystem in Hong Kong.
Fingers crossed on that. And maybe as a final part, and we've gone through a lot of topics, what would be your advice, as it were, to fintechs who are looking to work with financial institutions in the current environment? You know, you were very right. 7-8 years ago, most banks, if not all, were fairly dismissive of fintech as competition. Even B2B was like, we can do it. We have a tech vendors or whatever. We won't use it, to now changing and having digital and innovation teams which work very actively with fintechs. But there is, I feel, a gap in how the startups want things done and how the banks get things done, and that gap is something I'm trying to probably reduce in how we can do it. But in your view, what would be the, say, 2 or 3 things fintechs need to keep in mind so that it can help accelerate the journey of onboarding, but also engagement with their financial banking clients?
I think first of all, it depends on let me think. Okay.
We're going to cut this out. Think it through. I ask the last part of the question again.
No. It's okay. That you can just cut out the last bit. You can keep the first of all. I'm just thinking, how do I phrase this? Okay, so first of all, I think the period where a lot of the banks are looking to partner with fintechs, because that was the thing to do,
Sure. Yeah.
is probably cool down a bit.
Sure.
Not necessarily a bad thing, because these could be just vanity projects
Yeah.
that one collaboration then doesn't go anywhere, right? So I think that let's set the expectation first. Secondly, I feel the pain for many startups, especially the founders, when they try to navigate the massive matrix of a bank to who do I work with. So this is easier said than done, but the principle is find a decision maker and
Correct.
identifying someone in the bank to help you decide who is the best decision maker will help. How do you do that? That's the number 3, which is help them to sell you. So help them to help you.
Fair.
Which is explain to me your proposition in the more than layman way.
Yeah.
Because maybe you have a solution for asset management and your introducer is in insurance. Then if you be talking completely different languages, and if they can't understand what you're selling, they cannot really bring you to the right party. So keep the sales pitch really sharp, and then being able to let them understand and help you. And then I think number 4 is more for the banks or large institutions than for the startups. I always say this to my team throughout whichever team I'm in, respect the startup's time, because their time is more valuable than yours in a way, because your time is paid for by the bank. These people, they're not. So the mutual respect, because I've done fintech partnerships, I know how incredibly painful it is on both sides to onboard them. It's just be prepared for the very long journey. Yeah,
and help as much as you can as a founder, rather than the friction of why, right?
Yes.
It's like sometimes the conversation was like people say don't ask so often why does it need to be there. More try to figure out how can we overcome this and work collectively, because sometimes the rules can't be changed fast enough, right?
That's the rule is one thing, and also the solution. It's not just because I have a brilliant solution, you have to buy it. It's how does my solution work with your solution and make it better?
Integration, Okay.
Yeah.
Final note, GBA.
Okay.
Fintech in the GBA, what are your views? How is this going to grow out in the coming few years? We've seen that assimilation starting to take place, especially on transit, as you mentioned. And now more commute can be easy. Payments are becoming easier with for Hong Kong holders of Alipay, WeChat Pay, etc. for mainland as such. But how are you envisaging this?
Well, for us banks or businesses in Hong Kong, it's a very rich market over there, right? Because we only have 7.5 million people here, 360,000 odd SME business. But while it's there, it's a gold mine. So how do we get them by various connect scheme to serve the wealth management needs, etc., for the individuals? But for companies, it's more how do we help them to either use Hong Kong as the destination to serve the overseas market, or use Hong Kong as the transitory pad to go and step out of the greater China. So for us, it's super attractive. But from the fintech's perspective, so the association was with Shenzhen Fintech Association last Thursday, visiting Huawei's very exclusive, super impressive campus. And then we went to Shenzhen Hetao district, where it's going to be connected with Hong Kong's northern metropolis. And to look at the very impressive layout, the blueprint of how this area is going to be supported by policies, including customs, tax, all the favorable stuff tailor-made for Hong Kong tech startups, not necessarily fintech startups, right? And then the GBA, apart from the close proximity that you were talking about, it's more the what's above and beyond what Shanghai can offer you, Beijing can offer you, right? Then I think, again, looking at what the government and regulator is doing, to me, the most attractive thing will be the data flow.
Sure.
Because China has very strict data privacy control. But within the GBA area, I'm now starting to see signs that they will let data flow in a controlled way for specific purposes.
Yeah.
And that, I think, will be, once that is in place, then the fintech flow will be tremendous. Yeah.
We're looking forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lareina, thank you so much for your time, taking out time in your daytime for this podcast. We've loved having you here. We'll look forward to having you in a few months, and good luck with all the initiatives you're working for. So thanks once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Audience, stay tuned. Click like, follow, and subscribe for more of such interesting conversations in the coming days with FinStep Asia Edge podcast. Thank you.